Hi, I'm Bridget A. from Drunk Dog Creative, and I'm here to introduce this tutorial for the Southern Lights Circle Duster vest which I designed, and which I happen to have on right now. I really love how this vest feels on and how it waterfalls down the front and how it covers everything. I hope you enjoy making it as much as I enjoyed designing it. Welcome to Drunk Dog Creative. I'm using Lola, and this is a glitter Lola. This was a special edition that I got from Bill May Yarns. It's absolutely beautiful. I'll be using 2 of these. So to start with, we're going to do a magic circle. And we're going to do 16 single crochets into that magic circle. And being very careful not to split. Lola is stranded rather than plied, so you have to be careful not to split the strands when you do your stitches. And when you've got your 16, you're going to tighten the magic circle, being careful not to catch that end or twist it, which it will do if you're not watching it. So you want to make sure that that doesn't twist. Don't tighten it up too much yet. Leave yourself some room to find the first stitch, and you're going to slip stitch into the first stitch of the round. Sometimes I find if I turn my hook upside down and go point first into it and then turn around, it's easier when you have a lot of stitches on a magic circle. So now that I've done that slip stitch, I'm now going to tighten up and close that ring. And you can keep tightening it later. So now you've got a magic ring with 16 single crochets. So now we're ready for row 2. We have our 16 single crochets and we've closed it with a slip stitch. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to do a single crochet in the same stitch as the slip stitch. So it's a single crochet. Now you're going to chain 5. You're going to skip the next stitch and do a single crochet into the second stitch. And they can be hard to see when they're this close together in a magic circle. And you're going to repeat that all the way around. Chain 5, skip 1, single crochet in the next stitch. So now you're at the end of round 1 where you have done chain 5, skip 1 stitch, single crochet in the next stitch. You'll have 7 loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops, and an open chain that will make the 8th loop in a minute, but we don't slip stitch it closed. So that is row 2. It's chain 5, skip a stitch, single crochet all the way around. Round 3 of part 1. We've now got this open one. We're going to start working in a spiral. So we don't slip stitch and close the round. We work in a spiral. And for round 3, we're going to single crochet in the first single crochet of the previous round. And then we're going to do 2 single crochets into the chain loop or chain space next to it, and then chain 4. And we're going to use a stitch marker, and we're going to mark the very first stitch of this round. And it's going to be vitally important to do that. 1, because on the next round we have to do some skip stitches, and it'll help. 2, when you're working in a spiral, it may be easy to keep track in the first few rows, But after that, it's very difficult to know where the round starts and finishes because it's a continuous spiral. So all the way around now, we are going to single crochet in the single crochet below without splitting our yarn, 2 single crochets into that chain space next to it, and chain 4. Now the most common mistakes on this round are to forget to do the 2 single crochets in that chain loop and to forget to do the chain 4. So single crochet into the single crochet, 2 single crochets into the chain space, and chain 4. And we do that all the way around. And now we're at the end of round 3. And again, we don't close it off because we're working in a spiral. And what you have is single crochet into the single crochet of the round below, 2 single crochets into the chain loop, and then a chain 4. And you do it all the way around. Next, we have round 4. Now, rounds 4 to 15 follow the same pattern. What you do is you skip the very first single crochet of the single crochet group. So there's 3 in that group. You skip the first one. You single crochet into the rest in that group, which in this case is 2. And then 2 single crochets into that chain space next to it, and chain 4. So once again, pull it out a little bit so you can see, you skip the first one. So you skip that first single crochet, you single crochet into however many are left in that grouping, which for here is 2. You do 2 single crochets into the next loop and chain 4. And you work your way around doing that. And then we are back at the beginning. Take my stitch marker off, get ready to put it in the next one. So that's the end of round 4. Rounds 5 through 15 are the same. You always skip the first single crochet in the group, single crochet into each remaining one, 2 single crochets in the chain space, and then chain 4. And that, while it's not apparent now, is what will start to form the arms of the pinwheel, and skipping that first stitch is what pushes it into a curve. And up to row 15, you're making it wider, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how to decrease it. All right, I'm going to show you round 5 before I then leave you to finish up to round 15. But I want to show you what it's going to look like. Here's one I prepared earlier. So as you can see, these are not rows across this way. These rows are in a kind of curve. So by skipping the first one, you start to push it into a curve, and you're also widening it by adding the 2. And then from about here, you'll start narrowing it down till you only have one left. So let me get you started on row 5 and give you another tip. I'm going to skip that first stitch, single crochet into the second stitch. I'm going to put my stitch marker in, which I forgot to do last round, into that first stitch. And then I'm going to single crochet in each stitch remaining in that little group. So I've got 3 in all, and then 2 more into that chain space and chain 4. Now here's a little hint. This is round 5, and I've single crocheted into 3 stitches and added 2, which equals 5. So in each round, the number of stitches you do in this group, including the 2 in the chain, should equal the number of the round you're on. If it's more than that, you've probably forgotten to skip the first stitch. If it's less than that, you've probably forgotten to put the 2 single crochets in the loop. So this should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches in that group because I'm on round 5. I'll do one more. So I'm going to skip that first one, and I'm going to single crochet in each one of the group that's left. So it's 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to do 2 single crochets into that chain space. That's 4 and 5. I'm on round 5 and I have 5 single crochets. And then of course, chain 4. And you do that all the way around. And you keep going in that same pattern to round 15. So when you get to round 15, you should have 15 single crochets in a group with a chain 4. Always skip the first stitch, single crochet in whatever stitches are left in the group, 2 single crochets in the chain space, chain 4. So for round 6, there will be 4 in the group plus 2, which equals 6. For round 7, there will be 5 in the group plus 2, which equals 7, and so on to round 15. And I will come back at the end of round 15. All right, we've just finished row 15 now. So what I've got is 8 arms of the pinwheel or spiral, and each wheel should have 15 stitches in the group. So 15 single crochets plus the chain space so in each group times 8 groups. Now we're going to start decreasing the number of single crochets in each group. So again, there's my stitch marker for the first stitch of the round. I'm going to skip that stitch, and I'm going to single crochet in the second one, but I'm only going to do 13 on this round. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And that leaves 1 stitch at the end that I'm going to skip. So after I've single crocheted in 13, I'm going to chain 4. And then I'm going to single crochet in that chain 4 space and do another chain 4. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Skip the first stitch, single crochet into 13. That will leave 1 stitch at the end that I skip, chain 4, single crochet into that chain space, and chain 4. So what we have now is the group of 13 single crochets, and then we have 2 loops instead of 1 in between the pinwheels. And so we're going to fill the space between them with multiple loops instead of just 1 loop. So we've come to the end of round 16, and we know that because our stitch marker's there. We've done the chain 4, single crochet in the chain 4 space, chain 4. So now we're going to start the next round. Now rounds 17 to 22 follow the same pattern. And what it is you skip the first single crochet, you single crochet into the rest, skip the last one, then you chain 5, single crochet into that loop, chain 5, single crochet into that loop, chain 5. So you'll have 3 loops. Now the next row, you're going to have 4 loops. The next row, you're going to have 5. So that's how the pattern goes. You always skip the first and last, and then you do an extra loop each round until this group of single crochets is down to just 1 in row 22. But let me demonstrate. So we've ended row 16. So we're going to skip the first stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. I am going to move my stitch marker because now you really do need it. All right, so I'm now going to put it in that chain. So I've single crocheted in the second stitch. That's another 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, skipping the last one. So there's 11 single crochets in each group on round 17. Then I'm going to chain 5, single crochet into the next loop, chain 5. So we're now chaining 5 instead of 4. And from now on, it's always chain 5. Single crochet into the next loop, chain 5. And now we're ready to start the next repeat. So you'll have on this round 11 single crochets and 3 chain 5 loops. On the next round, you'll have 9 single crochets and 4 chain 5 loops. And then the round after that, you'll have 7 single crochets and 5 chain 5 loops until you're down to 1 single crochet at the end of round 22. And I'll meet you back there. So here we are at the end of round 22, and you should have a beautifully formed pinwheel. And on this last round, you should have done only 1 single crochet into the single crochet clusters and 8 chain 5 loops going around, except for this very last one where you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chain 5 loops, and you end with the single crochet in the chain loop where your stitch marker is. We're not going to do the 8th one here because that ending is going to be the start of the next part. So now you have formed an 8-wheel pinwheel, and we are ready to start part 2. Welcome to Drunk Dog Creative. We're going to demonstrate in this video part 2 of the Southern Lights Circle Duster. At the end of part 1, you have an 8-wheel pinwheel and some meshwork that's finished. What we need to do in this first bit of part 2 is now start to bring this part up and this part evened out so that we have a circle instead of the undulating ins and outs. What we also want to do is transition from a pattern that uses 8 as the base, groups of 8, to a pattern that uses groups of 12 for both the peacock section and for the ripple section. So what we're going to do for row 1 is we're going to pick up our loop and we're going to make sure we have all of it. So if you remember, we did not do the last chain 5 single crochet of round 22 of part 1. We left that out because we're going to now spiral into row 1 or round 1 of part 2. So we are going to chain 5. And we're going to single crochet into the next loop, which was part of the previous round. And I'm going to move my stitch marker so that it is now marking that as my starting point. And can't overemphasize enough how important it is to keep the stitch marker. So this is the easy part. We are going to do a chain 5 single crochet in the next loop 63 times, so all the way around, but we're going to end in the space that is 2 before the stitch marker. So that's all it is this round. Chain 5, single crochet in the next loop, all the way around. And what you should end up with is 63 loops. And I'll join you again at the end to show you how to end this round. Okay, we have now come to the end of round 1 of section 2. We've done 63 chain spaces. Technically, we should do a 64th, which would end right there. but I need to do something different going into that space. So I'm going to end the round 1 chain space early, and we're now going to change the start of the round. It won't make a difference to the end of the garment, but it'll make a big difference to how easy the rest of this is to follow. So we're going to call it done, not here, but here. Okay, so what we're going to do to start round 2 is chain 2, not 5, single crochet into the next one, chain 2, not 5, and single crochet, into the next one. And we're going to move that stitch marker to the first single crochet after the chain 2 space. So the beginning of round 2 is chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and that should form a diamond right above the last single crochet of these single crochet clusters. And what this is going to do is, right now we have this, wiggly shape that goes up and down. That will start to pull that up, and we'll start to round that off so that we end up with a circle instead of the bumpiness. So we're starting round 2, 1 chain space early, and it's chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. Now we're going to do chain 5, single crochet, 6 times. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that completes 1 section, and you repeat that again. So chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and that stretches that one up a little to start to even it out. Then chain 5, single crochet 6 times. So now we've come to the end of round 2 of part 2, and you've ended with a single crochet, a chain 5, single crochet in the loop just before your stitch marker. So now you have 64 loops. You've got 16 loops that are made of chain 2 spaces and 48 loops made of chain 5. Now, I've been asked how you count the loops because it looked like 63 on round 1 and 63 on round 2. You count, the first loop is the one you put your stitch marker in. The last loop is this little half loop that's now made by putting your single crochet into the middle of the loop before. So that is both the last loop of the round before and sort of the last loop of the current round, because we're working in a spiral. I know it probably doesn't make sense, but that's what it counts as. So the whole thing is the last loop of round 1, and this bit of it is the last loop of round 2. Very confusing. Now we're going to go to round 3, and round 3 has a special stitch in it that the round starts with, which I call a 5 cluster. And the 5 cluster is 2 treble crochets into this first chain 2 space, a front post double treble around the post of that single crochet, and 2 treble crochets into that one, but then they're done as a cluster, and I'm going to show you how in a minute. The first thing you do is chain 3, and at this point I would move the stitch marker now because it will get in the way of the cluster stitch. So I would just put it around that chain and get it out of the way. So I'm going to do a cluster, which means for each stitch you leave the last loop on the hook and you draw through all of them at the end. So I'm going to start the first treble. So wrap twice around into the chain 2 space, pull up a loop. yarn over and go through the first 2 loops and then leave that 3rd loop on the hook. Again, a treble, so you wrap 2 around, into that chain 2 space, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and leave that last loop on. Now you're going to do a double treble front post around the post of the single crochet. If you're not familiar with front or back post stitches, there is a tutorial at drunkdog.com to help you understand. But I'm going to assume, since this is an advanced pattern, that you already know how to do it. So double treble means 3 times around the hook, and then the hook goes behind the post, out the other side, yarn over and pull through there. So it's around the post of the stitch. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and leave that last one on there. Then you're going to do 2 trebles in the next chain 2 space. So you pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops, leave the last one on. 1 more treble in that space, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now you have 6 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, pull through all 6, and then do a chain to anchor it. And now you've got this little cluster. And then you chain 3 and single crochet in the next loop. So what you've got to start this round is chain 3, do the 5 cluster, a chain 3, single crochet in the next loop. To remind you, the cluster is 2 trebles, a double treble front post, and 2 trebles all put together as one with a chain to anchor it, and then the chain 3 single crochet. I'm going to go through this repeat a couple of times to help you with this, but you're going to do that sequence and then the chain 5s for the rest of the time. So I'm going to go through this sequence a few more times. Let's do the rest of this repeat. So after you've done the cluster, you've done a chain 3 and you've single crocheted in the next loop. Then you do a chain 2 and single crochet in the next loop. And then you do a chain 5, single crochet in the next loop 3 times. Chain 5, single crochet in the next loop, chain 5, single crochet in the next loop. You've done that 3 times. And then you do a chain 2, single crochet in the next loop, and then you're back at the start of the round again. So we're going to do it 8 times, and I'm going to walk you through it. And what you're seeing happening here is that cluster stitch has now pulled that middle up. Instead of it being, let's see if I can show you, instead of it being this kind of undulating, that cluster stitch has pulled that up to start to form the circle. So let me go through the whole repeat one more time. You're going to chain 3, and then you're going to do the cluster stitch. So the first treble, the second treble, leaving the loops on, is in that chain 2. Then a double treble front post. So you go around the post of the stitch. And again, you leave the last loop on. And then 2 trebles in the next chain 2 space. And then you pull through all 6 loops and anchor it with a chain. Then you chain 3 and single crochet in the next loop, chain 2, single crochet in the next loop, and then you chain 5 and single crochet in the next loop 3 times. That was 1. This is 2. And that's the 3rd time. And then you chain 2, single crochet in the next loop, and you're at the end of the repeat. If I spread this out, you can see how those cluster stitches with the chain twos are now bringing the middle up and making a circle more than the curly ins and outs. So you do that all the way around, and I'll meet you back at the start. We're now at the end of round 3, and we've done all of the repeats except that we have omitted the final chain 2 slip stitch because that essentially would put us there. So you're now around, and if this, when you spread it out, it still wrinkles a little, don't worry, that will come good. You see that it's starting to get a rounder shape. So this next row, round 4, is a little bit different. What you're going to do is from here, you're going to slip stitch into that next chain 3. And then you're going to, so you slip stitch into the chain before the cluster. You're going to chain 3, which counts as a first stitch, and you're going to do 2 double crochets into that chain, which makes a 3 shell. Together makes a 3 shell. And then you're going to do a 3 shell in the next one, but you want to move your stitch marker again to that first stitch. So put your stitch marker there without splitting your yarn. Let me just quiet the dog. So you've done your first 3 shell. Then you're going to do a 3 shell in the next chain 3 space on the other side of that cluster. And the shell is just 3 double crochet stitches in that same chain space. So you've started this round 4 with 2 3 shells. Then you're going to do a 3 shell in that chain 2 space. And then you're going to do a 5 shell in that chain 5 space. So again, 5 double crochets. Then you're going to do a slip stitch to the next chain 5, and then do a 5 shell in the next chain 5 space. And then you're back to the sequence of a chain 2 space, chain 3, chain 3, chain 2. So you're going to do 3 shells in each of those. So for the 2 spaces either side of that cluster, you do 3 shells, meaning a shell made up of 3 stitches, 3 double crochets. And then you do a 5 shell in the 5 chain space. Slip stitch to the next chain 5 space and do a 5 shell in the next chain 5 space. Oops. And then 3 shell in that chain 2 space. And you're back to the beginning of the next repeat. So what you're doing is a 3 shell or 3 double crochet stitches in every chain 2 and chain 3. And then in the chain 5 spaces, you're doing a 5 double crochet shell, a slip stitch, and a 5 double crochet shell. And you do that all the way around, and I'll meet you back at the end. So here we are at the end of round 4. I've just done the last repeat, which ends with the 5 shell, slip stitch, 5 shell. And then instead of doing, then you do the 3 shell into this space that was formed when you did the initial slip stitch. So you do the 3 shell into that space. And you slip stitch to the top, the 3rd chain of that first chain 3 that actually is sort of the first double crochet of that 3 shell. And then your round is done. And what you're doing now is you're forming a circle instead of the undulating, and you're starting to get ready to do the peacock stitch. So there's one more round of some shells, and then the further shells after that start making the peacock stitch. So we're now transitioning from the base 8 to a base 12. And I'll be back with the next row in a minute. So now we're ready to start round 5 of part 2. And this round, you'll be pleased to know, is rather simple. So we have slip stitched into that first stitch of the round at the end of round 4, which is a chain 3, which counts as a double crochet. Now we're going to chain 3, and this counts as a double crochet. And we're going to do 5 double crochets into that same change space. So that's 5 plus the chain 3 that counts. That means we have a 6 shell. So it's a 6 double crochets into the chain space, and that's called a 6 shell. And we're going to move our stitch marker to that first, the top of that first stitch, so we know where the round started. So there you have 3 6 shells in a row. It's always in that space between shells, and you do that all the way around. So go ahead, do that, and I'll join you at the end. All right, so I'm not at the end of the round, but I've turned the camera back on because there is one bit that some people might get confused about and might need a hint on. Remember, in the last round, you did a slip stitch into a chain 5. So when you're doing your 6 shells, you don't go between the shell and the slip stitch. You actually go into that whole thing, the whole chain that the slip stitch is in, because then it disguises that slip stitch. So after you've done your last 6 shell, you go right into that whole chain between the 2 chain 5s with your 6 shell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it disguises that that was from a row below, and then you keep going. All right, the second thing I want to point out is because some of the shells below are 3 shells and some are 5, and some are done in chain 2 spaces and some in chain 3 spaces, sometimes, because these slide, you can miss the space between the smaller and larger shell or the 2 smaller shells. So make sure you are going into every space between every shell, even if it's a 3 and not a 5. So those are 2 hints. All right, now I will meet you at the end of the row. And here we are at the end of round 5, where you've done a 6 shell in every space between shells all the way around, and at the very end you slip stitch where your slip stitch marker is into that top chain of the first chain 3, which counted as a double crochet. So that's the end of round 5. You can see we're now getting a circular shape. We have 48 shells, so we now have a base of 12, and we're now going to begin the peacock stitch, 12 of them around the circle. Welcome back. We're now at row 6. We've done our slip stitch to the first stitch of row 5, and we're ready to do row 6. I've taken my stitch counter out because now I need to slip stitch. I need to slip stitch in the next 2 and then into the space between the 3rd and 4th stitch. In this round, we're going to be working a lot in the space between stitches. So I want to slip stitch into there, not into the 4th stitch, but into the space between the 3rd and 4th stitch. So slip stitch there, and now we're at the start of round 6. So the first thing I'm going to do is chain 3, which counts as my first stitch of a 5 shell. So chain 3, then 4 double crochets into that space between the 3rd and 4th stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. So with my chain, that gives me 5 stitches between the 3rd and 4th stitch. And I'm going to put my stitch marker back in at the top of that chain 3, which is my first stitch of the round. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to chain 3. And I'm going to single crochet in the middle of the next shell. So again, between the 3rd and 4th stitches. Not actually in a stitch. Single crochet there. I'm going to chain 5, and I'm going to single crochet in the space between the shells. I'm going to chain 5 again, and I'm going to single crochet in exactly the same space so that I form a loop coming out of that space between the shells. And then I'm going to chain 5 again. Now I'm going to single crochet between the 3rd and 4th stitch of the next shell, so in the middle of that shell. Then I'm going to chain 3, and I'm going to do a 5 shell in the middle of the next shell, which means between the 3rd and 4th stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to do 9 triple crochets in the space between the shells, or treble crochets. Ready? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 treble crochets in that next space. Then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to do 5 double crochets, so the 5 shell in that space in the middle of the next shell, so between stitch 3 and 4. So you've now done that. And then you start the repeat again. And so what you have in a repeat is chain 3, a single crochet in the middle of the next shell, which means between stitches 3 and 4. Then a chain 5, single crochet in the space between shells. Chain 5, single crochet in exactly the same space. Chain 5, single crochet in the space between stitches 3 and 4 of the next shell. and then chain 3, a 5 shell in the middle of the 6 shell, chain 1, 9 treble crochets in the space between the shells, chain 1, and a 5 shell in the middle in the space between the stitches of the next shell. And you do that all the way around, and I'll join you at the end. Okay, we're almost to the end of round 6. I've just done my the chain 3 single crochet in the middle of the shell 6, chain 5 single crochet between shells, chain 5 single crochet between shells, chain 3 single crochet in the middle of the next shell. And now I'm going to finish the round. This will be the 5 shell in between the 3rd and 4th stitch of this last shell. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, chain 1, and now I'm going to do my 9 treble crochets in this last space. Now the 9th treble crochet in that space, and then I check that I have 9 so I don't have to frog later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, chain 1, and we just simply slip stitch to the top of that first chain of the round that joins us to the first shell of the round, and then we have finished. So on this last repeat, you don't do the final chain 5 because that's the first stitch of the round. So you just omit that and you do your 9 trebles, chain 1, and slip stitch to the top of that. So every repeat is the same except this very last one. You don't do the last 5 shell because it's already there from the start of the round. And that's the end of round 6. So now we finished row 6 with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, which was that chain. I've taken my stitch marker out, ready to start round 7. We're going to start this by doing 2 slip stitches, one into that second stitch of the 5 shell and one into the 3rd stitch of the 5 shell. Then we're going to chain 3 and do 4 double crochets into that same stitch, the 3rd stitch of the 5 shell. So now the chain counts as 1, that double crochet is 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm putting my stitch marker back in to the top of that chain 3 to mark it. All right, now we start the repeat. You're going to chain 2. You're going to skip this next chain space and do a single crochet into the second chain space. Now here's the thing with this section. You're going to get to parts of this and think that either there's not enough gap or there's too much gap between stitches. Trust the pattern. The peacock needs to fan out, and it has filler stitches, so some needs to be in and some out. So the stitches are all placed exactly so that at the end of the peacock section, your work won't curl or bunch or be too wide. But some of these stitches are going to feel weird. Just trust the pattern. All right, so I've chained 2. I've skipped 1 chain space. I've done a single crochet in the next chain space. Then I'm going to do chain 5, single crochet in the next chain space, which is that loop. No, I've obviously done something there. Chain 5 again, and single crochet in the next loop. So you've got chain 2, skip 1 chain loop, single crochet in the next chain loop, and then twice you chain 5, single crochet twice. Then you're going to chain 2, and you're going to skip that next chain space, and you're going to do 5 double crochets in the middle stitch of the 5 shell. So you see you skip that one and leave the 2 lines. Then you're going to, where you have the 9 triple crochets, you're going to next do a treble crochet into the first one. And then for the rest of them, you're going to chain 1 and treble crochet into the next one. Chain 1, treble crochet into the next one, chain 1, treble crochet into the next one, chain 1, treble crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, treble crochet into the next one, chain 1, you guessed it, treble crochet into the next one and chain 1. Treble crochet into the next one, chain 1, and treble crochet into the last one. So the written instructions say straight from this shell, no chains or anything, and you see that it's at an odd angle, it's supposed to be. So after the 5 shell, you do a treble crochet into the first treble crochet of round 6, then you do chain 1, treble crochet in the next one, 8 more times. So you have 9 treble crochets with chain spaces in between them each. And you go straight into a 5 shell in the middle stitch of the 5 shell from round 6. And that's 1 whole repeat. So you've done, let me see if I can show you. You've done chain 2, skipped that loop, single crochet into that loop, and then twice you've done chain 5, single crochet, chain 5, single crochet. Then you've done chain 2, you've done a 5 shell in the middle of the 5 shell below, then a treble, and then a single chain and treble 8 more times, and then a 5 shell in the middle stitch of the shell below. And then you're ready to do another repeat. I will come back to you at the end of the round to show you how to finish it. So now we're coming to the end of round 7. I have 1 more treble crochet to do in that group of 9. So I've done my chain. This is my last treble. And we omit the last shell of the round because we did it at the start of the round instead of the end. So after you do that 9th treble crochet, you slip stitch into that first stitch of the round, which was the chain 3 that counted as a double crochet for the shell. That's it. After the 9th one, you do the slip stitch, and there is your round 7 completed. It will still be a little bit bubbly, but that will work out as we work through the Peacock section, trust me. So what you have is a chain 2, single crochet, chain 5, single crochet, chain 5, single crochet. You've skipped these 2 chains. You have a shell 5, and then you have a treble crochet, and then 8 times single crochet, treble crochet, which brings you to here, straight into a 5 shell into the middle of the 5 shell, and then you start your repeat again. So that's round 7 completed. Okay, now we've finished round 7. We're starting round 8. I've got my stitch marker out so I can start the round. We've already slip stitched to the first stitch of the round to end the previous round. So now we're going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches to start round 8 from the 3rd stitch of the shell 5. So we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip this next space, and we're going to single crochet into the 2nd space. And if you notice, that just pulled that shell 5 over, which is what you want it to do. So single crochet into that space. Then you're going to chain 5, single crochet in the next space. You're going to chain 2. You're going to skip that next chain space and single crochet in the middle of the middle stitch of the shell 5. So in that 3rd stitch to again start to pull that over that way. Then from there, we're going to do 5 double crochets or a shell 5 in the first treble crochet. And then we're going to do a repeat of 4 after that, where you single crochet in the next treble crochet and then do a shell 5 in the next treble crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to do that 4 times in all. So single crochet in the next treble crochet and shell 5 in the next treble crochet. Single crochet without dropping your stitches, single crochet in the next treble, shell 5 in the next treble. So single crochet and then shell 5 in the last treble crochet. Then you single crochet in the middle stitch of that next shell, and then you are ready to start again. Sorry, momentary distraction by one of the dogs. So this is what you're now getting in this row. So you should have 3 chain spaces with these clusters of shells. And I'll meet you at the end of the row. So here we are at the end of row 8. We've just done our 5 shells with single crochets between them, and we're going to slip stitch into where that stitch marker is, that first stitch of the round. So then it lays flat onto the single crochet shell or the shell stitch below. That's the end of round 8. It should look like this. So we're going back from a circle to the bumps again. And here we are at the start of round 9. I've taken my stitch holder out so that we can start this. The repeat starts right from the beginning. 3 chains, and then 5 double crochet. You skip that chain and 5 double crochet into the next chain. There's 2 ways to do this. You can do the 5 double crochets just into the chain space, but it can be a little bit wide or gappy. I'll show you. So you can see that in the chain space, it can spread out sometimes, but that's fine. It's the easiest way to do it, and that's totally acceptable. The other way to do it, which is my personal preferred way, is to do the 5 double crochets into the 3rd chain stitch, right into the chain stitch itself, without losing a loop like I almost just did. It's a little more fiddly, so if you don't want to do it this way, it's fine. But I think it gives it, ignoring the little knot there, I think it pulls it a little bit better and keeps it looking more shell-like. But either way is fine. In any case, chain 3, 5 double crochet, chain 3, skip 1 loop, 5 double crochet, chain 3, skip the next loop, and then what you're going to do is a repeat of 4, a single crochet in the middle stitch of the 5 shell, and a 5 shell in the single crochet between them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you do 4 repeats of that. So single crochet into the middle stitch of the 5 shell, and a 5 shell into the single crochet between the shells. It's the second. This is the 3rd one, single crochet into the middle of the shell, 5 shell into the single crochet. Single crochet, this is the 4th repeat of that, and now the 5 shell, sorry, 3, 4, 5. So now you've done your 4 repeats of single crochet, 5 shell, single crochet, 5 shell, single crochet, 5 shell, single crochet, 5 shell. You do another single crochet into the middle of the next shell, and you're ready to start the repeat again. So what you have is a shell in the middle. You've skipped these 2 pieces, and it'll be clear why later. So you do a shell stitch in that middle loop, and then where you had 5 shell stitches, you now have 4 with single crochets in the middle, and you're ready to start the next repeat, and then I will meet you at the end of the round. So now we're at the end of round 9, and you've just done your single crochet, shell, single crochet, shell, single crochet, shell, single crochet, shell, single crochet. And as you can see, that was the first chain 3 of the round. You're just going to end here. The start of the next round will carry on right from this stitch. So I'm going to open that loop up a little, and I'll just spread this out a little. So what you can see what you've got now is you're starting to have a peacock section with the infill section. And as we go on for the next several rows or rounds, you'll see how this develops. So here we are ready to pick up round 10. Your stitch marker's there, but you have finished round 9 as the single crochet in the middle of the shell, and we're going to start round 10 from there. You're going to chain 2, and then you're going to do 3 double crochets into that middle stitch of that next shell. So you're going to skip the chain space where the marker is. You're going to do a 3 shell basically, and then you're going to do a chain 3 and another 3 shell into exactly the same stitch. So it's like 2 shells and a chain 3. And I'm going to move my stitch marker in a minute. So that first stitch is a chain 3, 3 double crochets into the middle stitch of this shell, skipping that space, chain 3 and 3 double crochets. And I'm going to move my stitch marker to that chain space. After I've done those 2 shells, I'm going to chain 2 again, and I'm going to single crochet, again skipping that chain. I'm going to single crochet in the middle of that shell, just a single crochet. And then I'm going to do a 5 shell in the single crochet in between the 2 shells of the row below. So that's 5 double crochets. Oops, this is caught. So you're starting to see the pattern evolve where you single crochet into the middle stitch of the shell, and then you do a 5 shell into the single crochet between the shells of the round below. And you do that 3 times. So there's my first single crochet and my 5 shell, my second single crochet and 5 shell, third single crochet and 5 shell, and then you finish with another single crochet into the middle stitch of the next shell. And then you repeat from the start of the repeat. So first you had 5, then you had 4, now you have 3. And they start blending together, as you can see. And then you've taken from a 1 and split it into 2 that will start to branch out. So I'll meet you back at the end of the row. All right, we're now at the end of round 10, and round 10 ends with the single crochet in the 5 shell stitch before the chain space that the stitch marker is in. That was the first chain space of the round. So that's the end of round 10. That's what it looks like. And we're going to start round 11. So for round 11, I'm going to chain 3. I'm going to skip that chain space again, and I'm going to do a 5 shell in the middle stitch of that 3 shell. So in that middle stitch, I'm going to do 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to move my stitch marker up to that starting chain space. So chain 3, skip the chain space below, a 5 shell into the middle stitch of the 3 shell below, and then you're going to chain 3 and do a single crochet in that chain space, chain 3, and then another 5 shell in the middle stitch of this 3 shell, the 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have the 5 shell, 2 3 shells, and now the 2 5 shells with the loops in between. And then you're going to chain 3. You're going to skip this chain space, and you're going to do what we did in the other rows. You're going to go to the very top 5 shell and do a single crochet into the middle stitch. Then you're going to do a 5 shell into the single crochet that is between the 2 shells. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to repeat that sequence once more. So single crochet into the middle stitch of that 5 shell, and then 5 shell into the single crochet that is between the shells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you've done that twice. Single crochet, 5 shell, single crochet, 5 shell. And then you're going to single crochet into the middle stitch of the next shell. And that's 1 repeat done. And you're starting to form the peacock fan. You can see now you've got the shells branching off there and the crown of the kind of peacock tail happening there. And I'll meet you back at the end of round 10. All right, we've now come to the end of row 11, which ends with the single crochet in the 5 shell before the chain space with the stitch marker in it. So let's take that out now. You can see, running out of room now, you can see how row 11 played out. And now we're going to do row 12. So for row 12, we're going to do chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to skip that chain space and do another 5 shell in the middle or 3rd stitch of the 5 shell below. So that's the first double crochet, 2nd double crochet, 3rd double crochet, 4th double crochet, and 5th double crochet. And then we're going to chain 3. We're going to single crochet in that chain space, chain 3, single crochet in that chain space, chain 3, and then do another 5 shell in the middle stitch of the shell below. So 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's that middle section, or the infill section, done. Chain 5, skip that chain space, 5 double crochet or 5 shell into the middle stitch of the shell below, chain 3, single crochet in the loop, chain 3, single crochet in the loop, chain 3, and another 5 shell in the middle stitch of the shell below. And then we're going to chain 5, and the same sort of pattern as before. We're going to single crochet in the middle stitch of the first shell. So never mix up the shells that have already had a single crochet in them. It's the first open shell. Single crochet, and then 5 shell in the single crochet between the 2 shell stitches. So 5 double crochets, that's the second one. That's the third one, that's the fourth one, and that's the 5th one, and then single crochet into the middle stitch of the next shell. And then we start the repeat all over again. So we're going back to more circular again instead of in and out. So these infill pieces are again pulling it up to be level with the peaks of the peacock fan. And we keep going this way, except I really should have put my stitch marker in. So let me do that. Stitch marker in, and I will see you at the end of the round. So there we're at the end of round 12. You can see we're getting into a circle again. Put my hook back in. Make sure it's through all of the strands. We have finished with that single crochet in that shell. What you're going to do now is a series of slip stitches to get to the middle of the next chain. So 1, 2, 3, and then into the chain itself, which is a little more fiddly, 4, 5, 6. You want to be in that third chain of the chain 5. So 6 slip stitches to get you to the middle of the chain 5. And then you're going to chain 3, which is going to count as your first stitch. And you're going to do 4 double crochets, not into the stitch itself, but into that chain space. So that what you have is essentially a chain 5 that's made of the chain 3 and 4 double crochets. And then it's time to move our little stitch marker into the top of that chain, which counts as our first double crochet. So you start the row with that 5 double crochets, the first of which is a chain 3. Then you're going to double crochet in each of these 5 stitches of the 5 shell. And don't forget that the first one is there, sometimes hides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5 shell, 5. Can you see what we're doing? We're trying to make a continuous round now. And then you're going to do 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. Or the chain 3, whatever that chain space is. You're going to double crochet into that single crochet. Then 2 double crochets into the next chain space. And then double crochet into the single crochet. And 2 double crochets into the next chain space. And then you're going to do a double crochet into each of the 5 stitches of that shell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're going to do 5 double crochets into the next chain space. And then you're going to do a double crochet into every stitch here, which is the single crochet, the 5 double crochets, and the single crochet. So 7 double crochets across the top of that peacock shell. It's the third one, 4th stitch, 5th stitch, 6th stitch, and the 7th stitch is in that single crochet, and that's 1 repeat done. So you're doing a chain, you're slipping into the 3rd stitch of the chain, so it's 6 slip stitches. Then it's a chain 3, which counts as a double crochet, 4 double crochet, and then you're doing 1 double crochet in every stitch, whether it's a double crochet or a single crochet. You're doing 2 double crochets into the small chains and 5 double crochets into the big chains, and then 1 double crochet into each stitch. So I'll meet you at the end of the row. So we are at the end of round 13. We have finished with a double crochet in the single crochet of the shell. So those are your last 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the shell. There's my stitch marker at the start of the round. So I'm going to just take that out and I'm going to do a slip stitch, tighten it up into the first stitch of the round. Now for round 14, we're going to do something different. Just chain 1 and turn your work around to the wrong side. This is the only time in the whole pattern we're going to work on the wrong side. You're going to do a front post double crochet around 34 stitches, and then you're going to do 2 front post double crochets around the 35th stitch. So at the end of the round, you'll have 432 stitches. And it's really important that you get that count right. If it's faster for you than counting every stitch, go ahead and just quickly count, 35, put a stitch marker in the 35th stitch all along, and you just know when you get to that marker, you do 2 in that stitch. And we're working around the post, not the top of the stitch. So it's a front post double crochet, so around your hook, so yarn over once, insert it behind the post and out the other side, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through 2 loops. That's the first front post double crochet made. We're going to do 34 of those. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 32, 33, almost there, 34, and then in the 35th stitch, we do 2. So 35, and 1 more in the same stitch gives you 36, and you repeat that all the way around. So there's 12 repeats of that, where you are doing front post double crochet around 34 stitches and 2 front post double crochets around the 35th stitch. And what it does if you flip it over is it gives this interesting little border going around. And that gives us, this is designed so that when we do the armhole in the next row, this will hold its shape if it's in the gap. If it's where your arms go through, this will still hold its shape against your back and not flop over one way or the other. That's why we're doing all of these. So front post double crochet for 34 stitches, 2 front post double crochets in the 35th stitch, and then start the repeat over. And I really should have put my stitch holder back in the first one. So I'm going to do that now. Stitch holder back in the first. So you can either count as you go, or you can sit down with 12 stitch markers and place them on the 35th stitch all the way around, and make sure when you get to that one, you do 2 front posts in that one. And I'll meet you at the end of the round. Right, we've come to the end of round 14. We're going to take our stitch marker out, and we're going to do a slip stitch into that stitch. And that concludes our front post double crochet round 14. Now you're going to flip it back over to the right side. And when you work this side, you got to remember that we're used to the loop of the stitch being to the right of the post, but now it's going to be to the left of the post because we worked the other way. Anyways, we're going to start round 15 by chaining 3. Now, round 15 is where we put in the armholes. So we've got a chain 3, which counts as your first double crochet. Then we're going to do 32 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 30, 31, and 32. 32 stitches. Now, that should bring you to a stitch that is right above the middle point of the peacock. If you've noticed, the fourth stitch from the right is the middle, and this one's right above it. So that's the middle stitch of the peacock. You're going to do 2 double crochets in there. So 2 double crochets in the middle of that stitch. Now you're going to start the armhole. You're going to do 49 chain stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 47, 48 chain stitches. Leave a long loop and just take that off for a minute. Oh dear, stitch marker. That should go in the first stitch of every round. Do it now. Okay, so I've made 48 chains. Sorry, 49 chains. My bad. 49 chains. Preferably not twisted, because you are going to crochet into them. So 49 chains. Lay it down. And you're going to skip 48 stitches. So you've done your double there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. I'm going to skip 48. My next stitch is going to go into that 49th stitch. So I'm going to put a stitch marker in it. So I've got my chain of 49 stitches. I've put my stitch marker where the 49th stitch is. So I've got 49 chains. I've skipped 48 stitches. And I'm going to do a double crochet into that 49th stitch, and that will count as 1. And I'm going to do 23 double crochets, including that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 21, 22, 23, and that should bring me back to the very top of the peacock again. If I look below 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, that next stitch is right above it. That's where I'm going to do 2 double crochets. Now it gets a little easier till we get to the next armhole. Now you're going to do several repeats, 6 repeats of double crochet in the next 35 stitches and 2 double crochets in the 36th stitch. And you're going to do 6 repeats of those, and I'll meet you when we come to the end of that. All right, so we've done 6 repeats of 35 double crochets followed by 2 double crochets in the 36th stitch. So we're now back to starting what we need to finish the round and make the second armhole. So now we're going to double crochet in each of the next 23 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 21, 22, 23. So we've now crocheted in the next 23 stitches. Now again, we're going to skip 48 stitches, so we can just count them off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. We're skipping 48 stitches, and we're going to come in on that 49th stitch, which happens to be that stitch in the middle of the peacock shell. So now we have to chain 49. 1, 2, 3, 4, 45, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. So we've done another chain of 49. We're skipping 48 stitches. This is not what you want to do. We're skipping 48 stitches. I think I've dropped a loop there. Hang on one sec. Let me fix that. 49. Skip 48 stitches. We're going to do 2 double crochets into our 49th stitch because it's at the top of the peacock. So I am going to take my stitch holder out and stick my... So, okay. Sometimes when you're doing a double crochet coming off a chain, the chain flips around like that did. So I usually hold the tension on it while I do it. Anyways, 2 double crochets into that 49th stitch, and there's the second armhole made. And now we are going to double crochet in each of the next 35 stitches. All right, so it's 35 stitches, and that should bring me back to the stitch right over that center of the shell where I'm going to do 2 double crochets into that stitch. And then I just have 3 stitches left in the round. So double crochet into each of those. And then a slip stitch into the top of that chain 3. And this round is done. So I've just put an extra chain to hold it closed. I'll take that out before we start the next round. But I want to kind of spread this out a little and show you what we've got now. We have got this is where our double stitch is. So that's now the top of our garment. We have 2 armholes here. And yes, I realize right now it looks like your arms are going to be kind of sticking up. They're not, because as we add the ripple on, that gets broader. So you've got 2 armholes. You've got your stitches. The double stitch is because you need the extra one to keep the circle going. And then what we're going to do on the next round is we're going to crochet into all of these, but we're going to set the foundation to start the ripple. And the ripple is the rest of the garment, so that makes it much easier. Now, so here we are about to start round 16. Now this is our transition to the ripple, and it's where we continue on the other side of the armhole. I'm designing this so that the peaks of the ripples sit level with the middle of the peacocks. So on our first row, to begin the round, before we get to the repeats, first thing we're going to do is chain 3. This counts as a stitch, so that counts as your first double crochet. Then you're going to double crochet in each of the next 32 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and that's 32. So counting that first chain, which counts as a double crochet, there's 33 stitches. And now we're going to start the repeats. And what the repeats are, well, I'll do the next bit first. I'm going to go into this next stitch and I'm going to do a double crochet, a chain, and another double crochet into the same stitch. And if you'll notice, that's in the first of the 2 stitches that were done together in the stitch before. So it's 2 double crochets, and that again lines right with that center of the peacock. So I'm going to do in that that stitch a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Then the repeats are going to be 36 double crochets, either in stitches or in chain stitches, followed by a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in one stitch. Now the chains, you have to do these in the chain itself, not in the chain space. And this is to give the armhole a kind of finished edge. Now the normal way to go into a chain is to somehow get your hook between the two bars on the top and the 1 bar underneath, like you would in a normal stitch. That is very difficult to do in these tiny little chain stitches. Although if you can, go for it. If you do it anywhere else, what can happen is the stitches can shift along that underbar and you can lose where the actual stitch is and do too many or too few by accident. I wouldn't normally recommend this, but I'm going to give you a recommendation for this particular pattern. I'm firstly going to do my first double crochet in that last double crochet below. Now I'm into my chains. So I'm going to make sure I'm always looking at the top of the chain, and I am going to go back loop only for each of these stitches, which means the V that's formed on the top, I am only going to go into the one away from me. I'm not going to try to go through the top 2 loops and get the underbar. I'm not going to try to split the stitch, because when you go to split it, you have to be careful that things don't move around. So I'm going to suggest, you can do this any way you want, but my suggestion is you do back loop only of the chain stitch in order to make sure, and don't twist it and get mixed up, in order to make sure you have the right number of stitches, because stitch count really matters here. I mean, it does on every round, but it really matters here. So we need to do 36 double crochets starting after the double crochet, chain, double crochet. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 'There, I've done my 36 double crochets, and because stitch count really matters, I am going to go back and count and double check. So find my double crochet, chain, double crochet, and start counting after that. 2, and I've got 36 double crochets. So now I'm going to do another double crochet, chain, double crochet in the next stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and those stitches, like I said, form the basis for the peaks of the ripple when we get to it. So I'm going to keep doing that around. I'm going to do 36 double crochets, and then I'm going to do the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the next stitch, and then 36 double crochets. Whether it's into a chain or a stitch doesn't matter, but we're going to do that all the way around, and I will meet you back near the end. All right, so I've done the last repeat, and then I've done ended with the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then I'm just going to double crochet in the last few stitches. There's 3 of them, and then slip stitch to the top of that chain, and row 16 or round 16 is finished. So now I've got the other side of my armbands, and I'm ready to start the ripple. So these double crochet, chain 1, double crochet is where you're going to start to form the peaks of your ripples, and in this round we're going to establish the valleys, which are all made by skipping 2 stitches. I've just put some stitch markers in to help me make sure I was in the right place, but it's pretty easy to follow the directions. Chain 3, that again counts as your first stitch of the round. Double crochet in the next 13 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 12, 13. Okay, I can remove that stitch marker. Okay, so I've done my 13 stitches. Now I'm going to skip 2 stitches, and that forms the valley. 1, 2, and then I'm going to double crochet in that 3rd stitch. Whoops. So you can see that it pulls them together. There's no chain or anything. You just skip those 2 stitches, and that will start to form the valley of the ripple. You want to do 18 of these double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 17, 18. And that should bring you to the first chain space. Remember, we did the double crochet, chain, double crochet. That's going to start to form the peak of the ripple. What we're going to do in there is double crochet in the chain space, chain 2, and double crochet in the chain space. Then the pattern is really easy from here on out. That's basically started our first repeat after we skip the 2. So the first repeat starts with 18, double crochet 18. Then in the space formed by that chain, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. Then you're going to double crochet 18. And don't forget that your first stitch is there. It can be hidden by the ones you just did. It's not that one, it's that one, because the loops are to the right of the post when you're going the same way continuously. So make sure you don't miss that, or your stitch counts will be off and the ripple will be off. So 18, 1, 2, so 18, just double check that, not counting those 2, starting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now I'm going to skip 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to do 18 more single crochets. 1, 2, and that's 18. So now we're ready for the next repeat. So each repeat after you do this first bit is in the chain, let me pull this over. In the chain space, you do a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, then double crochet in each of the next 18 stitches, skip 2, double crochet in each of the next 18 stitches. And what this is going to start to do as you do more of it is form your ripple. So there's your peak, there's your valley. And I'm going to finish this round and then I'll come back near the end. Okay, we're now at the end of round 17. Just pick up my yarn. I've done my last double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and now I do a double crochet in the last remaining stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and slip stitch to the top of the chain 3, which is counts as your first double crochet, and you're done with round 17. So that's the transition to the ripple accomplished. What will happen now, let me turn this a little more to make it more clear without the armholes. Now you're in the ripple, and there's a 3-row repeat to the ripple. And I'm not giving stitch counts anymore because in the pattern, because the ripple will take on a life of its own, but it's fairly simple. From wherever you are, you double crochet in each stitch between the valley and the peak. For rows 1 and 2 of the ripple, you do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and then a double crochet in each stitch to the valley. And you can see here how these 2 stitches sit right over the 2 that you skipped. So they're the 2 you skip. So after you do 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, you double crochet down every stitch to here, and you skip the 2 at the bottom of the valley. So one that's sort of this side and one that's that side. Skip those 2. Then you double crochet in every stitch up to the next peak and do 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. So then you're on your repeat. So you always do, when you're on row 1 and 2, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet in the chain space, and you always skip the 2 stitches that are over the 2 stitches that you skipped before. Row 3 of the ripple is 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet. That's the only difference. The rest is the same. They're very simple. They're laid out on the pattern for you. And that's it. You now just do the ripple all the way through. As you can see, I still have about half of my first Lola left, but that'll get chewed up very quickly because now it's yarn intensive. This has a lot of space. This is now solid. So you'll need the second one to finish the ripple, and the second one will only do probably that much after you're done with the first one. But you can stop, once you're in the ripple, you can stop on any row whenever you think the fit is right for you. And that's it.